I want to welcome you to Dream Chasers Radio with me, your host, Yaya Diamond. It is such a wonderful day. I know. I always say that, but if you're listening to this today, it is a wonderful day. And I'm thanking you so much for being with us. We have a great show for you today. You know how much I love authors. And we have a great author for you here today. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back. We have an author here today from another country, like all the way on the other side of the world. For right now, it's nighttime here and morning there. I have no idea where he is, but I am not going to try to pronounce his last name because I'm probably going to torture it, but I know his first name is Sylvester. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to talk to you. The last name is not so bad. It's Abanteriba. Yes, and I'm pleased to be talking to you. This journey has been quite a long one. We started with Jade and then been talking to Debbie Brown. And my book, Method for Extra Seconds of Erection, is a book I put quite a bit of my soul into because of the topic I try to bring to light. Yeah.
Wow. You know, I was reading your, and I'm going to go back into this because I know people are watching us today and I'm looking at my notes, but I was reading your bio and it says here that you love science, right? And that you actually are a professor of propulsion systems. Tell me about this. How did you get into this?
Yeah, well, what will I say? I mean, I tumbled into it. Yes, I've been dealing with propulsion systems, started with engines for your car, then all the way I got into live engines for ships, and then all the way into producing engines for aircraft. So your aeroplane, when you sit in it, please remember me. And now I deal with rockets. So rocket engines, we're talking about going to Mars now. So you need rockets to put you into space. And even I wrote another book before this one. I wrote a book entitled Poetic Retribution from Mars. And I talked about how we've sent people to Mars and what happened over there. Yes, propulsion systems have been what I've dealt with most of my adult life. I like engines because propulsion is what moves us from place to place.
Right.
And I'm talking to you now. I've been to the US a number of times, and this is because of the propulsion system for the aircraft that brought me over there. And even centuries ago, people use propulsion systems. They use steam engines, and that's also propulsion and all that. Yeah, so it's a very important part of the human technological culture.
Wow. You know, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. I'm not smart enough to talk to you. I'm just going to say that. I am just not smart enough to talk to you.
No, probably much smarter than me. you know things that I have no idea about.
Well, I mean, propulsion. I mean, you know, it takes a lot. I mean, there's calculations, there's distances, and there's just, okay, this has to last this long, this has to last that long, this has to come off, otherwise that breaks and that will blow up. I mean, there's so many different components to propulsion that most people, maybe even me, I don't know much about. But your book, this book here, this is your baby right here. Tell me about how you knew you were going to write this book.
Yes, even as a child, anything I see, there is a story about it in my mind. So a lot of things, situations come up against, always have a feeling I could write a book about this. So the whole idea that, if you've read the synopsis, the whole idea that human beings will take things in the creation just for their own pleasure. The book talks about a rhinoceros that was simply killed because human beings wanted to use the horn as an aphrodisiac. And the point I was trying to make is that, in fact, the whole idea irritates me. So, and what I was trying to indicate in this book is that although human beings believe that, we are very powerful and we have the right to do anything we want in nature, sometimes the creatures which are supposed not to be so powerful do come back against us in ways that surprise us, that our powers are actually putative. We're not that powerful as we believe we are. So the storyline of this is that, okay, this rhino, which was nursing a baby, was killed simply because people wanted to use the horn. And the story says that everything in life is actually recycled. You die, you go before the Creator, and you are asked, so what do you want to come back as? This is not the end of it. And you can then choose whether you want to come back as a mouse, as a fly, as a goat, or anything. So this rhino was asked by the Creator, so what would you like to go back as? And then she said, I want to go back as a virus with the power to humiliate men. And then the Creator said, why would you like to do that? And then it said, I was simply killed because the human beings wanted to use my horn as an aphrodisiac. And I was actually nursing a baby, and I'm sure my baby starved. So I'm very angry, and I want to get back at men. Wow. And then the Creator said, well, I see your point. There are times I wonder whether I shouldn't have given the human beings more compassion than intelligence, because they misuse their intelligence. So then the rhino was granted the request, say, okay, you go back as a virus. Wow. And do whatever you would on the human beings.
Okay, so I have to stop you. When did you write this book?
I wrote it in 2016.
Oh my gosh.
What does happen is that when that virus came, what happened, in fact, it first manifested itself on a cruise ship and then spread around the world. And what happened is exactly what is now happening in the present pandemic. The chaos it caused and all that, the world economy went into shambles. And wow. But the main thing, it humiliated men in such a way that any man who was afflicted, as it started on the cruise ship, any man who was afflicted at the sight of a woman would no longer be able to control himself. So men were chasing women in the street, even pilots flying a plane would leave the plane flying and be chasing the air hostess in the aircraft. So it caused so many problems. Yeah. And in the end, the United Nations had to say, okay, so what is the trigger that will cause the men to behave this way? is it the sight of the woman or the smell of the woman? And then the scientists established that it was the sight of the woman that would cause the men to behave that way. So it was then decided that all women should wear the burqa. You know what the burqa is?
I do.
Yeah. So, but then that brought its own problems because the Islamic world said, no, this garment is holy to us.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want infidels to use it. We don't want non-Muslims to use this garment. And at the same time, the Christians said, no, we don't want Christian women to wear this garment because it's a backdoor Islamization of the world. You're trying to convert everybody. So there were fights in the streets, shootings and all that.
Oh my gosh. Wow, what an imagination. I mean, you just, I mean, like, this is like, I'm in it. I'm like in it. I'm believing this. This is crazy. Keep going. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, so because of that, okay, so women could not go to work or they had to wear that gown, they stayed at home. So you have half of the workforce staying at home. And the men who were out there, if they happened to see a woman, and if they were afflicted by the virus, then they were not in the state to work because at the sight of anything that looks like a woman, they were agitated and all that. So the world economy was in shambles, you know, and there were fightings in the streets, shootings, and everything. It came to the point that the world, just because of this virus, was on the verge of war. So many interest groups with their own agendas and all that. And at the same time, the scientists were fighting very hard to find out what was it. They didn't even know what was causing it. And then there was one scientist a geneticist from the US who was working hard on this, but he actually started his work in genetics in such a way that he was using genetics to establish paternity. There were times people who claimed that a child was not theirs, a man who, and was suspicious, and he would work out and establish that. And he did it he also had a theory that as human beings, if we suffered a very traumatic event in the past, very, very traumatic, then this would be inscribed in your genes, and that will be passed on to your descendants. And as time goes on, if science is advanced enough, we will be able to decode family history from the descent, what has happened hundreds of years ago to a particular family. You could get the genes and extract the information from it. And this man, he actually married an African American. He was a Jew, but he married an African American. And then he was trying to extract the history from his own children, the African history. So, but this is just a little bit, but he was the scientist who was able to discover the virus that was causing the havoc. And then when he discovered the virus, he was then able to go back and extract where the virus came from. And then in the end, they were able to generate the image and got back to the discussion the virus had with the creator.
Oh my gosh,
So,
wow.
yeah, so that's, I
Wow.
mean, you have to read the book.
Definitely, definitely. Murdered for extra seconds of erection.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's how it came about. And then eventually, when the virus was discovered, then they had to decipher the language. You see, they had to decipher in what language was the virus speaking with the creator.
Mm-hmm.
And they traced that back to the Congo. It was the language of the pygmies.
Mm.
And then they got, they got a pygmy from...
Don't give no more. Don't tell no more. That's it.
Yeah.
Because then people are not going to, they got to read the book. This is amazing. I love this. Are you going to be turning this into a movie by any chance?
Well, I hope it could be, yes.
I think it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I can just imagine a bunch of men chasing women around.
Oh, it
That's funny.
Well,
Hey.
it has other aspects, whereby in Italy, they had these ladies of the night who said the United Nations should have consulted them about this because they know the trade of sex and all those things. So then they decided to go out, group of women, to go and challenge the soldiers who were guarding, because by that time, the United Nations has put women in every city in a different part, guarded by soldiers who were not afflicted by the virus.
Oh my gosh.
And so the women then went out to challenge the men, and then, all sort of confusion arose over that too. Yes,
wow.
so it's got all sorts of components in it.
It does.
But it goes down to the fact that, and I saw, was it Blue Ink? One of the reviewers said, for those wondering, this novel is not about sex, but it is about, the power that other creatures in the creation can exhibit. Mm-hmm. And it combines scientific and religious implications, they claim that it is, the reviewer said it is quite an exceptional experience for anybody who reads it. So awesome. I think maybe it is, yeah.
I think maybe you got it. I definitely do, because that's just what you've told me is just absolutely crazy. And I understand it's a different kind of virus, but you wrote about this virus before coronavirus came out. So that is amazing to itself.
Yes, I wrote about it. Was 5 years before this coronavirus came.
Yeah.
And all the actions, a lot of my colleagues who have read the book, they write to me and say, well, it is your fault that we have it.
It's your fault.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. Well, Sylvester, thank you so much for being on the show. What kind of advice do you give to those people who want to write a book? They have it in their head. So they just go ahead and do it?
Yes, I think, think about it and make the time for it. Sit down and actually try to write. Because sometimes you can have the ideas floating about in your head, but unless you start putting it down to paper or on the screen, then you don't get the full force of your story. It's only when you begin to put it down, you feel the force. In fact, it drives you forward. When I start to write, I know where I need to begin and where to end, but I have no idea of what happens in between. It's when I start writing that it takes over. The characters take over, they come true. But I never know what is in between the beginning and the end until I start writing. So my advice is, if you want to write, just make the effort to start. And sometimes the starting is difficult, just to sit down and start putting things down on paper. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Sylvester, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it so much.
Okay, thank you for making the time. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Anytime, anytime. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hey, we're going to have all of that information for Sylvester's book. It's called Murder for Extra Seconds of Erection, right in the description box below. So that way you guys can just go ahead and go there. It'll be really easy to do. I want to thank you guys so much. And again, thank you, Sylvester, for being on the show. And thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to dare to be different. Until next time, guys. Bye.
Okay, bye.